Assalamualaikum. Untuk star rating boleh masukkan sampai 10.5. So siapa yang belum lagi masukkan bolehlah. Assalamualaikum dan selamat sejahtera. Saya mulakan program kita pada pagi ini dengan umul kitab Al-Fatihah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Yang berbahagia ahli-ahli pengurusan PKNS, ketua-ketua eksekutif anak syarikat PKNS, ketua-ketua bahagian, pegawai-pegawai kanan serta hadirin yang dihormati sekalian. Majlis pada pagi ini ingin mengalu-alukan kehadiran Puan Nasim bin Abdullah, Peguam dan juga rakan kongsi di Tuan Muhammad Reza Co selaku penceramah jemputan kita pada hari ini. Alhamdulillah, bahagian perundangan dengan kerjasama bahagian sumber manusia berpeluang sekali lagi untuk menganjurkan klinik perundangan siri ketiga dan yang terakhir untuk tahun 2024 dengan tajuk Introduction to Real Estate Investment Trust atau lebih dikenali sebagai REIT. Tanpa melengahkan masa lagi, bagi membincangkan dengan lebih lanjut topik kita pada pagi ini, saya ingin menjemput Puan Nasim untuk memulakan pembentangannya. Dengan segala hormatnya, dipersilakan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh kepada semua yang hadir. Saya Nasim Muhammad Abdullah dari Muhammad Reza Co. Kami adalah panel bagi PKNS. Saya cakap campur-campur ya. Kita ni selalunya provide corporate advisory services kepada PKNS dan also perkara-perkara yang melibatkan hartanah, conveyancing, transfer of transactions. So kami difahamkan bahawa PKNS sekarang berminat untuk menceburi possibility of investment in real estate investment trust sebab PKNS antara syarikat kerajaan yang ada banyak hartanah. Jadi there are not just options to kita jual beli tanah tapi also actually create value dalam through a real estate investment trust. Yeah? So saya akan generally go through what is a real estate investment trust and then apakah kemudahan-kemudahan dan benefits dalam investment in a real estate investment trust. Okay, kalau ada soalan in between tu boleh tanya in between ataupun kita akan concentrate dekat sesi Q&A later. Yeah. Okay, can I just tanya kat sini kebanyakannya dari bahagian apa? Bahagian perundangan ke, investment ke, campur-campur? Campur-campur ya? Okay, alright. So, are you all familiar with what is a real estate investment trust? Pernah dengar? Kan? Quite a common and very sekarang it's a upcoming phenomenon lah dekat Malaysia ni. Semenjak kebelakangan ni semua orang cakap pasal investment trust. and then they go for listing, and then the property yang kita pernah dengar macam Pavilion REIT and then Subang Parade, semua ni semua dimasukkan ke dalam mall, dalam REIT. So we try to understand kenapa and apakah advantages and the how a real estate investment trust works from a legal perspective and also from an investment perspective. Yeah. Okay, so we will first go through part 1 is the introduction to REITs, real estate investment trust, and then the types of REITs. Kita ada 2 jenis, satu is listed REITs and satu unlisted REIT, and then the regulatory framework as to how we come up with real estate investment trust, and then the principles behind the fundamental principles for a REIT, the structure of and the features of REITs, and then how you invest in REITs, and then how is a REIT probably relevant and applicable to PKNS. Yeah. Okay. So what is a REIT? Okay. Real Estate Investment Trust is a fund. It is a fund or a trust. It owns, manages and operates income-generating real estates. So hartanah-hartanah yang is kept under one company, it is actually put into a trust structure. Real estate investment trust ni similar macam unit trust, tapi unit trust dia bukan backed by asset. It could be backed by different types of commodities, but real estate investment trust ni dia mesti ada kena-mengena dengan hartanah. So it will be managed and operate through a real estate investment trust. Investment trust is like a company, but it is not incorporated through a constitution macam M&A. Dia ada trust deed. It is governed by a manager, and then there will be trustees, and then how they run the asset, similar to a company. Not very different, tapi cuma the instruments yang govern a REIT is not so the same as a company. Okay, so it commonly focuses on properties, for example, shopping mall, office buildings, hospitals, industrial properties and hotels. These are the common ones because it is income generating assets. Kalau kita beli macam kedai ke benda-benda yang macam rumah-rumah ni, dia not income generating asset. It is normally a big building with long-term tenants. So then it is an income generating asset which is actually injected into a REIT for purposes of actually income generating and for us to distribute to unit holders. Okay. REITs provide a way to invest in quality, large-scale commercial real estate without having to buy the properties directly or to finance any properties. Investors earn returns via dividends and potential capital appreciation. So for people like us, kita mungkin tak ada keupayaan untuk beli aset-aset besar. So kita, however, we have the opportunity to actually purchase units. Macam shares, you purchase units in a real estate investment trust, and then you actually get returns from your investment. You will see, I rasa ada advertisement yang kita tengok ni, Idris Amanah Hartanah Bumi Putra punya. Dia ada advertisement tunjuk makcik ni. Dia nak beli hartanah tu, dia tak mampu, tapi dia bangga yang dia is a unit trust punya investor. So dia rasa macam, oh, harta tu sebenarnya dia punya juga sebab dia ada bahagian dalam harta tu. So it allows people like you and me to actually invest in big assets. So kita dapat kelebihan yang daripada returns yang kita dapat through that investment that we put into the REIT. Yeah? So typically before REITs were introduced, an investor may invest in property stock or physical landed property to get exposure in real estate sector. Unlike traditional property investment, REITs are liquid and they are traded like stocks. Okay, because it is macam unit, kita boleh jual beli. jual beli unit. So especially kalau benda tu listed, then kita go to the market, bursa securities, kita boleh beli and jual. Kalau kita not interested, we can actually sell and then we can get our returns. Or we can hold it for long term and then kita dapat distribution through dividends and units, declaration of distributions lah basically. So historically, a REIT was introduced in the United States in 1960 to enable individuals to invest in large-scale real estate portfolio. So real estate portfolio ni maknanya banyak jenis aset. So real estate in the hospitality ataupun industrial. So different portfolios. Tak semestinya one REIT only concentrates on one type of asset class. They can actually have many asset classes in one REIT, all managed by the same manager and with a trustee to actually have a check and balance on what is actually happening and how the assets are actually managed in one real estate investment trust. So this REIT punya phenomena spread to countries worldwide, including in Malaysia, Japan, UK and Australia. So I think every country in the region has actually got their own REIT market and they've got their own securities commission to actually govern cara-cara how the REITs are actually being managed and who are actually authorized to become a manager or a trustee for a unit for a REIT trust. So it is a very highly regulated industry because it involves an offering to the public. So instead of listing a company, you are actually listing the fund, which actually owns all these assets. Yeah. Okay. In Malaysia, in 2005 was the first real estate investment trust listed in Bursa, which is Axis REIT. Okay, and then some of the REIT guidelines have gone through a lot of amendments. Dulu there's just one REIT guidelines. Sekarang ada Islamic for Islamic REITs, ada listed and ada unlisted REIT. Tapi the more common REITs in Malaysia is of course listed REITs, because unlisted ni the tradability of the unit is actually very limited because you can't just go out and sell it to the public. It is just to a certain class of investors only. So in Malaysia, Malaysian REITs are primarily focused on urban commercial properties. It is growth driven by urbanization and infrastructure expansion, and the REIT market capitalization on Bursa Malaysia has exceeded 40 billion as of today. Okay, so it's a very progressive market, and that it has reached about 40 billion in the market. Yeah. So the next question and most important question is, how do REITs work? Macam mana dia punya structure, okay? As I mentioned earlier, it is structured as a corporation or a trust, okay? So because it's a trust, mesti ada trustee punya konsep, mesti ada trust deed. So it is a method of raising capital by issuing units to investors, and the units are actually raised through acquiring of income generating real estate asset. Okay. Okay, and part of the structure, am I going too fast? Tell me kalau ada tak faham apa-apa, but so far okay? Okay, yeah? Okay. So you will have to have a property manager. The REIT management team oversees property operations and tenant relations. So of course dalam satu bangunan tu kita ada tenants, banyak penyewa semua. So there is a management of, walaupun building tu is injected into the REIT, the tenancy operations, the collection of rental tu semua still ongoing. It's not impacted. It's just that the income goes into the REIT. Okay, so your tenants are unaffected by this injection, and rental income and other property generated income are generated from these assets, yeah. And then a significant portion of the income is distributed to unit holders. So sama juga kalau kita owner of a building, rental tu kita dapat benefit lah from the rental. Tapi because kita own a unit, so the rental has got to be shared through distribution. So the manager normally will decide berapa persen yang kita punya macam EPF ni semua, berapa persen dividen yang kita akan bagi kepada unit holders. So then that will be shared with all the unit holders. Normally it is quite attractive, the percentage that is given to the investor, because the REIT is very well managed and there's many properties. So the distribution is not based on one property but the portfolio of all the assets that's in the REIT. Okay, so the key characteristics of a REIT, yeah, there'll be a pool of investors. Like in this auditorium, semua antara kita ni boleh jadi investor. So we decide how many units we are interested to acquire, and it is all into a pool of investment by all the investors. There will be, what is promised by the manager is that there is going to be a regular income distribution. So kadang-kadang it's quarterly, sekali dalam 4 bulan ataupun once in 6 months, or sometimes it's a once in a year punya offer. It is not a guaranteed, but it is something that a REIT manager can actually give a commitment that they will actually try to achieve a certain distribution of income. Okay, it often enjoys favorable tax treatment. That is one of the reasons kenapa a lot of institutions and developers want to inject their asset into a REIT, sebab there's a lot of tax benefits. We will come to that later. Okay, macam kalau kita jual beli rumah, kita kena bayar stamp duty, ada RPGT, so whereas in a REIT, there are a lot of tax exemptions that the government has actually given to parties who are involved in a REIT investment. Yeah, and of course it is managed by experienced professionals. Okay, so the property management team, the manager, the trustees, they are all people who are authorized by the Securities Commission with necessary licenses to actually carry out capital market tradings and dealings. Alright. Okay, as I mentioned just now, there's 2 types of REITs. Satu is listed REITs and satu is unlisted REITs. Listed maknanya it is actually offered on Bursa Malaysia Securities Berhad, just like shares which are publicly traded. So listed REITs are traded on stock exchange, example Bursa Malaysia, allowing the general public to invest in them. So you can buy and sell on Bursa punya CDS. You have a CDS account, you can actually trade your REITs, the units that you hold in the REIT. Yeah. And then there are, for listed REITs, there are stricter regulatory oversight by the Securities Commission and Bursa Malaysia, ensuring high transparency and compliance standard. So kita ada guidelines untuk listed REIT. So there's a lot of things. Who can be a manager? Who can be a trustee? What type of properties can be injected into the REIT? What is the valuation? Semua tu is very comprehensive in the guidelines that is actually issued by the Securities Commission, and these guidelines are enhanced. I think almost every year ada enhancement. So the type of asset yang boleh dimasukkan ke dalam REIT pun makin hari makin expanded, because in Malaysia pun the types of our landscape for property is no longer the normal structure, no longer leasehold, freehold property. Kita ada injection through vesting, injection through leasing structures. So the REIT guidelines has been expanded to allow for different types of properties to be injected into the REIT. Okay, so it's a enhancement process which goes through on a yearly basis, the guidelines. So we have to keep updated on the changes in the requirements and regulatory framework. Okay, and then for a listed REITs offer higher liquidity as investors can easily buy or sell units through the stock market. So similar, I think you're all very familiar. Kalau syarikat yang sendirian berhad ni, kita tak boleh nak jual kita punya shares senang-senang, sebab you have to ask, are you interested to buy my shares, are you interested to buy my shares, whereas dalam a big landscape like a listed REIT, you just go to bursa and then jual, trading. You've got your remiser, you've got the manager, so the sale is done through the online platform. Okay, and then of course, it is accessible, it's open to a wide range of investors, including retail and institutional investors. So some of the investors will be people like Tabung Haji, EPF. They too have got a portfolio where they are allowed to actually invest in real estate investment trusts. Sebab they are institutional investors who are authorized to actually subscribe to units in REITs. Okay. And then there is also a valuation process where at the point of listing and at least once a financial year, there will be a valuation. So hartanah yang akan dimasukkan ke dalam REIT tu, kita kena go through an asset valuation process. So there will be a valuer. The valuer will assess the value of the assets to be injected. And then it is to be submitted to the Securities Commission. Okay, and then Securities Commission boleh tanya, why do you come up with this value? What kind of comparison have you done? So there will be professional valuers to value the asset before it can actually qualify to be injected into the REIT. Okay, so this asset valuation ni for a listed REIT, it is done every year, at least once in a financial year. And kalau dia tiba-tiba nak inject additional asset, before it can be injected, it must also go through valuation. Okay, and then dealing in units should comply with securities laws, guidelines and rules. Okay, macam dalam in Malaysia, Securities Commission governs the issuance of units. So kalau kita nak issue a certain number of units, we need to get the SC approval. And if let's say the REIT ni dia boleh beli aset tak semestinya in the form of cash. So not necessarily you take a bank loan to buy the asset before you inject the REIT, the asset into the REIT. You may also issue new units to the party that you're acquiring the asset from. So that will actually result in an increase in the number of units. So bila there is an increase in the number of units, you have to go back to Securities Commission, do an application for listing with Bursa. So proses tu is memang it's a bread and butter for any REIT. Going to the Securities Commission and going to Bursa ni something yang kita akan very familiar and akan jadi kebiasaan kalau kita involved in this REIT punya transactions, ya. Okay. And then for listed REITs, the issue price of units offered for subscription must be at least 50 cents each. Okay, so there is a minimum of 50 cents each lah for one unit. Okay, tapi the price escalates, it revolves because it is listed, whether there is a demand and supply for the units too, it will actually control the price of the units. Tapi at the initial offering, it must be at least 50 cents. And where units are offered to related parties in conjunction with the IPO, the price of units must be set at least the issue price to the public. I'll give you an example of this, yeah. Let's say, I think saya dulu dengan Razi, your Prac punya CEO, we did the Amanah Raya REIT punya Amanah Raya REIT. Dia acquire kebanyakan hartanahnya daripada Amanah Raya Berhad. So because Amanah Raya Berhad dah ada banyak harta, banyak hartanah, so most of the Amanah Raya Berhad punya asset is injected into the REIT. So when a REIT acquires assets from Amanah Raya Berhad, for example, most of the time they issue new units. So Amanah Raya Berhad becomes a unit holder. Okay, so whatever you offer to Amanah Raya Berhad, which is kind of like a sponsor in a transaction where most of the assets are acquired from one institution or one entity, then the price that you offer must be on arm's length basis. It cannot be on a preferential treatment where I give Amanah Raya a higher value because you are my sponsor. So it must be at least the issue price to the public, sama. Okay, it is a related party transaction because they are also unit holders, but it has to be on an arm's length basis and at the same price that is being offered to the public. Yeah. Okay, and upon listing and quotation of the fund on a stock exchange, the price of the unit should be the price quoted on the exchange. So this is where the fluctuation happens lah, because tak semestinya tiap-tiap hari harga unit tu is more than 50 cents. Sometimes it goes lower, you know. So it is a risk, but that is why it is important for you to decide before you invest, are you comfortable with the asset class? Are you comfortable with the party that is managing the REIT? Do they have the necessary experience? Do they have people in there with profiles who give you comfort that they are able to actually maneuver and push the REIT up? And who are the trustees? Because at the end of the day, for a unit holder, the trustee represents your interest. If there is anything, trustee yang akan oversight body tu is the trustee. Their role is to protect the interests of the unit holders. So you need to tengok siapa trustee. Mesti trustee macam CIMB trustee, maybe some is a trustee that you can have comfort that they've got the proper corporate governance in place. So the individuals that are involved in the REIT is very important when deciding on which REIT to invest in. And also for example PKNS, if PKNS has got a lot of asset and wants to venture into a REIT, it is important that the correct manager is put in place, the correct trustee is identified to protect the interests of the trustee, and also of course the asset class. Okay, that is very important. We'll come to that in a little bit. Okay, and then on suspension of dealings in units, okay, suspension should comply with relevant securities laws, guidelines and rules. This is where the trustee decides that they do not want to continue with the units, dealing with the units due to exceptional circumstances, yeah, where maybe there is sufficient reason to do so, considering that the interests of unit holders or potential investors require this suspension. Okay, suspension must cease as soon as practicable after the exceptional circumstances have ceased and in any event within 21 days of the commencement of the suspension. Suspension ni kadang-kadang ada market conditions which macam some material information pertaining to the REIT, and then the trustee can take the position that they need to suspend the market for a while until things are back to normal. So all these rights of a trustee to actually suspend and all this is governed by the trust deed. Trust deed is actually, it's exactly the constitution of the REIT, and it tells the trustee what they can do, how they want to call for unit holders meetings. Everything is governed in a trust deed. And trust deed pun ada compliance guidelines that you have to actually comply in accordance with the listing requirements and compliance guidelines. Yeah. Okay. Let's just go through in brief here some examples of listed REITs on Bursa. Yeah. Okay. Amanah Harta Tanah PNB. This was established on the 20th of March 1989. Okay. Some of the portfolio, it's a retail office portfolio REIT. So Plaza Vets is in the portfolio of asset. I'm not sure if it is still ada lagi, because they sometimes sell the assets as well, and they inject new assets. So from my last checking, Plaza Vets, Maidin Seremban, Lotus Kajang and Maidin Melaka are amongst the assets which are under the portfolio of Amanah Hartanah PNB. The manager is Pelaburan Hartanah Nasional Berhad. This is the REIT manager. And then the trustee is Amanah Raya Trustees Berhad. You will see Amanah Raya Trustees Berhad appearing a few times in REITs, sebab they are quite a well-established trustee who are empowered and entrusted to actually manage unit holders' interests for real estate investment trust. Yeah. Al-Akar Healthcare REIT. Okay, Al-Akar Healthcare REIT. It's established on the 10th of August 2006. It is one of the few Sharia compliant REIT. Okay, dia punya asset is mostly hospital, nursing college and hotels. So because it is a Sharia compliant REIT, they don't only have to comply with the listing requirements, REIT guidelines for listed entities and non-listed. There is also a special guideline for Sharia compliant products. So you have to have Sharia advisors. The type of assets that you can inject into the REIT are also more stringent. It must be Sharia compliant assets, not like any other asset. Dia macam very close scrutiny by the Sharia advisors. Normally ada 3 Sharia advisor on the panel. So they actually issue a pronouncement, Sharia pronouncement, to say asset ni qualify or not for a Sharia compliant REIT. Okay, so for Al-Akar, for example, it is a sponsor-based lah. Most of the time it is sponsor-based REIT, because a lot of the KPJ hospitals that we know, it is all injected into Al-Akar Healthcare REIT. For now, I rasa about 80% of their assets are KPJ assets. So what happens is, all the KPJ punya asset, they sell all these hospitals to the REIT, and then the REIT will lease it back. It's a back-to-back. It's a lease-back arrangement. They will lease it back to the hospital. So hospital runs as usual. Hospital collects operator fees, whatever income from retail, and then they pay rental to the REIT. Okay, so for KPJ hospital, and generally in Malaysia, as a general rule, you can actually also own assets which are not just in Malaysia. You can also own assets overseas. So KPJ, for example, they own an aged care and retirement village in Brisbane, Australia. Okay, but I think we were involved in the transaction. Now they are going through the process of selling the asset. Tapi of course, because it is an asset class which is overseas, you have to comply with Australia punya requirements as well. So you have to comply with their real estate rules in Australia, and then also whatever tax applications, tax requirements. So it is not that easy, because assets which are in Malaysia is much easier to control, but KPJ is one of the, Al-Akar is one of the REITs which actually owns assets outside of Malaysia. Okay, and as I mentioned, because it is a Sharia compliant REIT, so the tenants must carry out Sharia compliant activities as well, not just the activity at the business, but even the tenants. So for a hospital, it's got to be Sharia compliant lah, kan? Apa yang dia buat yang tak Sharia compliant? Of course, even if ada yang some non-Sharia compliant activities, it cannot be more than 20% of the rental. Okay, so only if it is a Sharia compliant REIT, you need to actually comply with those Sharia compliant requirements as well. Yeah. Next example is Al-Salam REIT. Okay, this was established on the 29th of September 2015. The assets are commercial, retail, office and industrial purpose. The manager is Damansara REIT Manager Sendirian Berhad, sama dengan Al-Akar because it's under the same Johor Corp punya group. Okay, so they are under the Johor Corp structure, and trustee again is Amanah Raya Trustees Berhad. Yeah. M First REIT, established in September 2006. It's an office, retail and hotel. The manager is M Ara REIT Manager Sendirian Berhad, and the trustee is Maybank Trustee Berhad. So you can see the name of the trustee dengan manager ni macam repeating sikit lah ya. It's always about the same. And then Amanah Raya REIT, as I mentioned, I worked with Razi on this. It's industrial, office, hotel, institution, retail. So some of the assets dia macam Holiday Villa Alostar, Holiday Villa Langkawi, Segi University, Help University is under the Amanah Raya REIT. The manager is Amanah Raya REIT Kenedix REIT Manager Sendirian Berhad. I think this is a joint venture company. It used to be under ARJMF, tapi the manager is now a joint venture with a Japanese company. So the interest from the Japanese have come into our Malaysian REIT market. So they are the manager for Amanah Raya REIT. Yeah, trustee. It started off with CIMB Islamic Trustee, and then they went through a change in trustee in May 2019. So the trustee punya role pun it can be changed. Sometimes the manager feels that they have reasons to choose a different trustee, and of course it has to go through the process. We need to apply to the Securities Commission to actually apply to see whether or not the replacement trustee is someone that is qualified to actually take over the portfolio as a trustee. Yeah, so for Amanah Raya REIT from 2006 all the way until 2019, it was CIMB Islamic Trustee, and then it's now changed to Pacific Trustee until today. Yeah? The other very famous yang famous boleh kata famous punya REIT is the Pavilion REIT. Okay, Pavilion REIT concentrates mostly on retail mall. You'll see the Bukit Bintang Pavilion is under Pavilion REIT. They've got Pavilion Bukit Jalil. And then when Pavilion REIT expanded, Pavilion Bukit Bintang expanded to Elite. Dia ada Elite punya wing tu. That wing was also injected into the Pavilion REIT. So for Pavilion REIT, they've got, just like Amanah Raya I mentioned just now, they've got like a sponsor kind of relationship. And even for Al-Akar, they've got arrangement with KPJ hospitals. For Pavilion, their shareholder, the shareholder at the holding level is Urus Harta Cemerlang. So whatever asset from their structure is, whatever asset which belongs to Urus Harta Cemerlang group, they've got a right of first refusal. So every time there is an asset that is available for sale, the Pavilion REIT has a right to actually acquire those assets. Okay. So there is in the documentation, in the sale and purchase agreement, there will be a right of first refusal to say for an adjacent land, Pavilion REIT will have a first right of refusal to actually acquire that property. And then again on Pavilion REIT ni dia a little bit active lah kan. If you notice, there is a tunnel that crosses from Pavilion to Fahrenheit Mall. That tunnel, last time, for you to actually own an asset, for a REIT to actually own an asset, you must have title. You cannot buy properties yang tak ada title, because how do you then register the REIT's interest? How do you then transact a transaction with property with no title? But for Pavilion REIT, they manage, and I think the guidelines has been expanded to say that ancillary assets can also be injected into the REIT. So the tower belongs to DBKL. But there is a right now, Pavilion has actually acquired the right to actually a right of use over the tower, the tunnel. The tunnel is a pedestrian tunnel. So that pedestrian tunnel is also part of the Pavilion REIT asset. Walaupun there is no separate title. It cannot be sold separately, but it comes together as an ancillary parcel. Okay, so you can see we are becoming more and more creative on the type of asset that can be injected into the REIT. Not the normal, ada tanah, ada title, baru boleh inject. Now it's like very creative lah. The authorities have also become more creative. The developers have also become very creative to see how can they maximize rental and also income for the REIT. Okay. I think we've got a bit more for the REITs. Axis REIT established in 2005 is also office, industrial and warehouses. Sunway REIT is hospitality. Sunway REIT is all the Sunway Group punya assets lah. Dia punya hospital. So Sunway REIT was established 8th of July 2010. Trustee is RHB Trustee Berhad. Hector REIT I think is quite famous since 2006. It owns the Subang Parade Mall and a few other malls. I think Mahkota Parade in Melaka. And UOA REIT, UOA properties primarily in Kuala Lumpur. So all the Wisma UOA and all this is under the UOA REIT under the trusteeship of RHB Trustee Berhad. Okay. So now, what is an unlisted REIT? I think it is very uncommon because in Malaysia for now, there is only Alpha REIT, which is the only unlisted REIT in Malaysia. It's not very popular, and because it is not tradable and it is only available to a certain class, high income, high net worth investors only. So it's not very not a very common structure. But I can give you the liquidity. The difference between a listed and unlisted is the liquidity for unlisted is of course very low liquidity since units cannot be bought or sold on the market. I only know of someone who wants to sell, only then I can buy. I believe the EPF is the sole subscriber for Alpha REIT, so there's only one investor. It's limited to institutional or qualified investors, often requiring a higher minimum investment. So high net worth investors, and valuations are conducted periodically, typically based on appraisals rather than daily market price. Because there's no market price that for a listed REIT, you can go to Bursa and then you can check the price. What is the price for today? What's the fluctuation in price? Whereas if it is an unlisted REIT, then it is actually through newspapers. They're supposed to actually advertise the price through the newspaper articles, in the main newspaper articles lah ya. But interestingly, Amanah Hartanah Bumi Putra, I think we all know Amanah Hartanah Bumi Putra. It is PHB is the sponsor. It is not a REIT, but it is a hybrid between a unit trust and a REIT. But it is a classic example of an unlisted unit trust. So what happens is, walaupun there is you cannot trade it in the open market. They've got agreements between the Amanah Hartanah Bumi Putra Fund and the sponsor to say that if a unit trust holder wants to sell the unit, then Pelaburan Hartanah is obliged to purchase. So it is like a government, it is a backed, guaranteed lah. Maknanya you will never lose your 50 cents. One unit is worth 50 cents, you will never lose your 50 cents. At the minimum, when you go to the banks, because they've got a few distributors, Maybank, M-Bank is a distributor. So when you go to the banks, there is an undertaking from the sponsor to say, I am obliged to purchase. So there is no, that is the only way for an unlisted REIT to actually work. There must be a purchase undertaking, and for Amanah Hartanah Bumi Putra it's a Sharia compliant fund. So all the transactions are the purchase undertaking, there's a sale undertaking, there's a substitution undertaking. So when a sponsor wants to remove an asset, then there is an obligation to substitute. So the structure is very interesting. If you have time, just go through Amanah Hartanah's website and then you will see how it is structured. So there's a lot of undertakings to ensure that although it is not an unlisted unit trust or a REIT, it is still attractive for investor to actually invest in it. Okay? So similar for a REIT, that's the only way. Yeah. Yes? Yes.
So maybe you can enlighten us the real meaning of the usage of the term sponsor in this state.
Okay.
Sponsor lain
Okay.
Kind of this transaction.
Okay. Okay, sponsor ni dia selalunya macam kita buat listing pun, there is normally a sponsor. Sponsor is the person who were originally the owner of the assets. So back to the PHB punya structure lah yang banyak ada sponsor ya. Dalam Amanah Hartanah Bumi Putra, the SC has actually mandated that Amanah Hartanah Bumi Putra can only buy assets which belong to Pelaburan Hartanah Berhad or affiliates of Pelaburan Hartanah Berhad. So they cannot buy properties which belong to PKNS, for example. Tak boleh. For Amanah Hartanah Bumi Putra, it is a limited sponsor group. So if for any lease back arrangement, it's got to be a lease back to Pelaburan Hartanah Berhad. Sebab Pelaburan Hartanah has got their own tenants, for example. So when they inject, and Pelaburan Hartanah Berhad pun, dia pun a bit more, as I mentioned, is quite interesting because they don't inject the asset, registered ownership of the asset. They inject beneficial interest in the asset. So it is structured like a sukuk. Sukuk pun, I rasa PKNS is involved in sukuk kan. Sukuk ni is sale and buyback of beneficial ownership. So dia tak transfer title. Dia, okay, so macam Pelaburan Hartanah, dia transfer beneficial ownership to Amanah Hartanah Berhad. Amanah Hartanah Berhad release that beneficial ownership back to PHB. So tak ada change. The structure tu tak ada perubahan actually. The equation is still, at the end of the day, it goes back to Pelaburan Hartanah Berhad. Pelaburan Hartanah Berhad as the sponsor will collect rental daripada all the tenants. Let's say dia ada, normally dalam REIT ni you ada macam anchor tenant lah, macam one master tenant that you know you can actually collect the rental from, so that there is no risk that you cannot actually collect and pay for the rental. But as far as the REIT is concerned, whether the lessee manages to collect rental from your tenant is not the REIT punya problem. As far as the REIT is concerned, I've got a long-term relationship with the sponsor. So the sponsor dapat collect rental ke, tak dapat collect rental ke, you must pay the REIT, because the REIT has got a commitment to pay dividends and distributions to the unit holders. So that's why dia macam quite a comfortable arrangement for a real estate investment trust. So sponsor ni kebanyakan REIT ada sponsor because dia ada target aset yang dia nak dapat untuk masukkan dalam REIT dia, and that REIT the sponsor is committed to actually whatever asset yang dia ada, dia committed to actually inject it into the fund, provided that it qualifies with the criteria of a real estate investment trust lah. So dia mesti income generating, there must be a lot of tenants, and then there is a very low risk that there's no collection of rental, for example lah. And of course the before the property can be injected into the REIT, kita kena buat the necessary due diligence, because not everything complies with the requirements of a REIT. dia very highly regulated as I mentioned. So kita ada due diligence checklist to go through, and then once all the checklist has been ticked, and then we are comfortable that it can be injected into the REIT, then kita boleh proceed with that. Yeah, so for Pavilion REIT, for example, Urus Harta Cemerlang is the sponsor. So semua aset dia ada right of first refusal. We have a first right to actually inject it into the REIT. Okay, so that's how the sponsor punya relationship is in a REIT punya transaction and the structure lah basically, yeah. Okay, so the regulatory framework. Okay, regulatory framework ni ya. Okay, how do all these guidelines come about is pursuant to the Capital Market and Services Act 2007. CMSA allows the Securities Commission to come up with guidelines because in one act it is impossible to actually cater for everything. So under the act, the Commission is allowed to come up with guidelines and practice notes as the Commission considers desirable. So that's where on a yearly basis they go through the guidelines again, make improvements, and actually enhances our REIT landscape and portfolio to allow, as I mentioned, ancillary assets to be included. So there's no need to go back to Parliament again to make changes because the statute allows the Securities Commission to actually come up with guidelines, okay, to govern. So maybe in a few years' time there will be new guidelines because they keep changing. They follow the trend, ikut Australia, ikut US and UK, and then we try to adopt it to our market conditions in Malaysia. Yeah. So the two guidelines that's very important in REITs is guidelines on listed real estate investment trust and guidelines on real estate investment trust for private and unlisted REITs. Yeah. So as I mentioned, the more common one is the listed REIT in Malaysia, for reasons I've already made clear just now. And the aim of these guidelines is to ensure transparency, fair treatment of investors, and sound governance. Okay, the other important guidelines are the Islamic Capital Market Product Services Guideline. This is purely for Sharia compliant REIT, and this guideline doesn't just govern real estate investment trust. Every Islamic product, for example, sukuk, is also governed by Islamic Capital Market Product and Services Guidelines. So SC has made it very simple. Anything pertaining to Islamic, it is governed by the Islamic Capital Market Product and Services Guidelines. Yeah? And then, of course, there's the Asset Valuation Guideline. This is very, very important because it determines how the valuation is actually done in respect of REITs and assets which are to be injected. And there will be the valuers, there will be part of the working group when we actually establish a working group to set up a real estate investment trust for any entity. So the working group will comprise of valuer, a manager, trustee, and of course the lawyers and the principal advisor to actually come up with the prospectus. Yeah, so there will be the prospectus guidelines because it will be an offering to the public. So an offering to the public can only be done through a prospectus, and then prospectus ni it will contain a lot of information pertaining to the asset, pertaining to the manager, it's a guide to every investor. So it is a long process. Sometimes it takes about 6 months to a year for a company to actually come up with this complete set of prospectus to actually make it interesting to the investor and make them understand and decide whether or not their decision to actually invest in this REIT is a good and correct decision. Yeah, and then of course the listing requirements of Bursa Securities. So for listed REITs, it doesn't just stop at the guidelines for listed REIT. There's also listing requirements. because it is a long-term arrangement, so the listing requirements will be applicable to all listed REITs as well, yeah? Okay, on the fundamental principles, okay, the trust structure, I think this is a little bit of a repeat of what I mentioned earlier. The assets will be held in trust by a licensed trustee. So for the manager and the trustee, it has to go through SC approval first. So once the SC approves the appointment of the manager and the trustee, only then the REIT can be established, and then only then can a trust deed, it starts with signing of a trust deed. The trustee and the manager will sign a trust deed to actually govern the relationship of the manager and the trustee in actually managing the day-to-day activities of the REIT, yeah. So, and then in the trust deed, it will give powers to the manager to do certain things. It gives the power to the manager to remove the trustee, for example, or to actually introduce new project committees, independent property manager. That is all within the purview of the manager. So the manager, the REIT manager ni selalunya will be to a certain extent aligned to the sponsor lah. Dia macam ada very close relationship because they will have to work very closely with the sponsor of the REIT. Okay, and then of course there must be an independence between the trustee and the REIT manager. It cannot be parties who are related to each other, or parties who are in conflicting position. That cannot be the case. Yeah, it has to be totally independent of each other for purposes of ensuring check and balance. Okay. So the key stakeholders in REIT is the trustee who holds and safeguard the REIT's assets. So for real estate investment trust, when a sale and purchase agreement is signed, it is signed by the trustee as trustee for the REIT. So when you do a search on the title, it will not show the REIT punya nama, it will show the trustee punya nama. So it will say registered proprietor is the trustee, for example, CIMB Islamic Trustee, as trustee for a specific REIT. So because REIT in itself is not an incorporated entity, so everything is held by the trustee. So jual beli or whatever, it is actually registered in the name of the trustee. Yeah? And then the registered title is normally held by the trustee as well, not the manager lah. Sebab trustee is the registered owner. Okay. And of course, it is important for the trustee. The trustee, they're not trustee for just one REIT. They've got many REITs, as I gave examples just now. Yeah, Amanah Raya trustee is trustee for so many REITs. So it is their responsibility to ensure that their role is not in any way conflicted when acting as trustee for many REITs. And then the assets are actually, the books and records are kept separate between one REIT and another. So it cannot be interchangeable. They've got to manage it separately and hold high integrity and responsibility for all the documents of each REIT. Yeah, so they must ensure compliance with laws and investor rights. So investors' rights and interests comes first at all times, even before the manager or the sponsor. Their job is to ensure that the interests of the unit trust holders are at all times given priority. Okay, and then the manager executes the REIT's investment and operational strategies. Yeah, so normally what happens is the manager is the one who takes the active role, and then they will refer whatever business decisions, investment decisions to the trustee, for the trustees board to approve. Once the trustees board approves it, then they will actually proceed with whatever investment. So it's they work hand in hand very closely. Everything that the manager does is normally in consultation with the trustee. So they must be parties who are able to work together lah, macam not parties who are on loggerheads with each other. But of course, independence must at all times be maintained. Okay, the trustee cannot be swayed by the decisions of the manager. If the trustee feels that this asset is not something that is to the benefit of the unit holders, then it is their job to actually highlight this and raise it with the manager. So they have independent roles, yeah. And of course, the valuer provides independent property valuation to determine the asset value. Okay, for a manager, the directorship of the manager must be at least 2 independent directors with a minimum of 1/3 independent director. So the board of the manager pun it must consist of independent directors, not just directors who have got who are not independent lah and who've got an interest. So the independence is very important, and now they have actually introduced that there must be at least 1 woman on the board of the manager. Okay. So ni macam ikut bursa punya corporate governance lah. They want ladies to be involved in the management, yeah. Okay, and the director of a manager cannot hold office in another management company. So it must be selected selectively for one management company, so that there is no intertwining of roles between different management companies. Yeah. Okay. Then moving on to the objective and strategy. Okay, in the trust deed, the objective and strategy of the REIT is very important. Okay, if you want to change the objective and strategy of the REIT, you need to go back to unit holders and get special resolution to actually amend the trust deed. So when and the objective and strategy is set, it must be wide enough to give some flexibility for a change. You cannot be very limited strategy and objective. So it is important to ensure that it is a long-term objective and strategy, so that you do not need to go back to unit holders to amend the objective and strategy. Sebab it is not easy to get 75% unit holders to actually approve an amendment to the deed. Okay, so these are things which must be taken into account when coming up with the objective and strategy. And we cannot, a REIT cannot deviate from the objective and strategy which has been entrenched in the trust deed. Okay, and it also appears in the prospectus of the REIT, the objective and strategy. Yeah. So the asset class for the REIT, it must be consistent and relevant with the objective and strategy, and it must provide prudent spread of risk in line with the objective and strategy. Right? Okay, permitted investments for a REIT, yeah. Nama dia pun REIT, Real Estate Investment Trust. So it must be, the permitted investment must be real estate lah, kan? So as I mentioned just now, the real estate must have a good track record. It cannot be vacant, tak ada, you inject it into the REIT and then the REIT tak ada tenant pula building tu, ataupun 20% occupancy. So it doesn't jive with the strategy and objective of the REIT. So it must have a good track record. It must be free of encumbrances at the point of listing or acquisition. So it cannot have a charge on the land unless the charge is charged by a bank which has given financing for the acquisition of the asset. So that is permitted, but you cannot have other encumbrances on the land, other caveats and all that. No, because it must give the REIT the flexibility to deal with the asset. So we don't want tenants to actually, or lease owners to actually have registered leases on the land unless you have actually obtained consent for it to be freely dealt with by the REIT. Yeah, and then the REIT must have legal and beneficial title to the asset. Okay, it must have majority control of the asset, and it must, of course, ancillary asset is now allowed, and also now properties which are acquired through leases can also be injected into the REIT. So maknanya through a lease ni, dia bukan a freehold asset ataupun leasehold asset. Leasehold asset ni kita memang boleh transfer. This is, for example, asset dekat Johor kan, the I think Tanjung Pelepas type of asset. I give you an example of the Tanjung Pelepas asset, ya. It belongs to the state lah, macam FLC ke, tanah yang belong to the state. And then let's say in PKNS punya case, you acquire a lease for 30 years. So you don't own the land, you cannot sell the master land because it doesn't belong to you, but you have acquired a 33-year lease of the land. So you can inject that lease, your lease right, into the REIT. That is now permissible, provided that it is a registered lease. So there is a need to distinguish between a leasehold asset and a lease injection. Dia ada berbeza. Leasehold ni tanah yang 99 years. When I want to transfer, I need to get consent from the state to transfer. Tapi I can, macam PKNS beli leasehold land, you can hold title to it. But if you buy a lease ownership, then you will never hold title to it. You will just be registered on the title as a leaseholder. But that can be injected into the lease, provided that the injection punya, your lease tenure, tak ada back to back you more than your lease term lah. Kalau your lease term is 33 years, you cannot give a lease for 40 years to lease back to for 40 years lah, for example, you know. So that is a positive action now. You can actually inject lease ownership. And I think what's also interesting is vacant land can be injected, provided that it has got property development potential. Okay, so vacant land, walaupun for now vacant land ni tak ada rental income, so there's no track record, but if there is potential, then it is okay. And then the other type is you can actually acquire properties under construction. Properties under construction, the one that I have personally done is the one for Pavilion REIT. When they acquired the Elite Pavilion Elite, at that time, the building is not complete. Tapi as long as when you enter into the sale and purchase agreement, you must have the conditions precedent to say that the CF must be issued. Because payment of the purchase price pun, it is normally not paid on bullet payment. Normal sale and purchase agreement, you pay a deposit and then you pay in tranches. So even for Pavilion Elite, for example, even at the point of completion, the full purchase price hadn't been paid sebab title dia belum keluar. So I think, you know, the retention sum punya mechanism can still apply. You can continue to own the asset as long as there is a stakeholder to actually hold the retention sum. Then that asset can also be injected to the REIT. So if you identify an asset which is not yet completed, but you see a potential, it is under construction, that asset can also be injected into the REIT. It is one of the permissible criteria of asset that can be injected into a REIT. Okay, that's a very positive move from the authorities basically, yeah. Okay. So other than real estate asset, that is the plain vanilla kind of asset, memang all property. A REIT can also invest in non-real estate asset. For example, SPV, special purpose vehicle, which owns real estate, or securities, which is shares of an SPV which owns real estate. And can also be cash deposit and money market instruments. Okay, tapi there's a certain percentage that it must be real estate asset lah. It has to be mostly a majority under real estate asset, yeah. And there are investment restrictions, which is not more than 75% of the asset value must be invested in income generating real estate. So despite the flexibility that has been given for us to be more creative in the type of asset that a REIT can actually invest in, there is that minimum 75% threshold that the REIT must invest in income generating real estate assets. So the flexibility is technically in that 25% lah of the asset class, yeah? Okay, the importance of valuation. Why is it important for a valuation to be conducted? Is because all REIT value is based on net asset value per unit. So with the valuation, that's the only way you can actually determine what is the value of the REIT unit. Yeah. So it ascertains valuation of assets and liabilities, and the valuation cannot be more than 6 months before the date of the SPA. So at the point of listing, the first listing, of course, we will do an asset valuation. And then on a yearly basis, there must be an update because you will have to make the necessary announcements on the value of the unit per share, value per unit. And but at the point of acquisition, before an acquisition is done and injected into the REIT, there must be a valuation done. And that valuation cannot be more than 6 months old, the information in the valuation. So kalau at the point of signing, when we submit a valuation, it cannot be a valuation which was last year. So it has to be updated on a regular basis, yeah? Okay, why is it that the valuation is important? Again, is because we need to ascertain for a manager and for the manager especially, at what price are you going to acquire the asset? There is a buffer of 10% up and 10% discount that is permissible, but it cannot run away from that threshold, the 10% thresholds, yeah? Okay. Compliance and reporting, this is normal, just like any other structures. There must be comprehensive reporting, including financials and property updates, quarterly updates on key developments and financial performance, and also approval processes. Any major acquisitions require regulatory and investor approval. So for a listed REIT, which has been established, maybe after 5 years, you decide to acquire additional assets. So it depends on the threshold of the percentage value of the transaction. If it exceeds 25% of the transaction value, then you need to go back to unit holders. So you need to issue a circular to all your unit holders, and then for them to actually approve the transaction. So everything depends on percentage ratios and thresholds, which is actually all very clearly stipulated in the SC guidelines and Bursa punya listing requirements for listed REITs, yeah? So actually, we are very well guided by the authorities on the do's and don'ts for injection and disposal of assets for REITs. Okay. The structure of REIT, I think I mentioned just now, there's the REIT manager, unit holders, REIT, the properties, and the trustee. Okay, this is the diagram showing the key important entities and characteristics in a REIT. Yeah, of course, what is missing is, of course, the lawyers who will be doing the drafting of the transaction documents, the merchant banks who will be preparing your circular, and of course the valuer, as I mentioned just now. They're very key to a REIT structure, yeah? And then sometimes property managers are also appointed by the manager, the REIT manager, because since there's a large portfolio of assets, sometimes there is a need for property managers to be appointed. I think not many REITs have got property managers, Razi, kan? I think it's not a requirement, but it is encouraged lah, yeah. Okay. Okay, why the structure of REITs? Investors will be the beneficiaries of the trust holding the properties because they ultimately own the REIT, the properties through their interest in the units held in the REIT. And then trustees must ensure compliance and fiduciary responsibilities, and manages and focuses on operational and financial performance. Okay, I think this one pun lebih kurang is the properties must be income generating. Diversification of asset class is recommended. Okay, this is I think quite key. You cannot, a REIT shouldn't concentrate on a certain class of asset only, because as I mentioned, your strategy and objective must be long term, so you cannot be concentrating just on hotels, for example, because there will be a downturn in the market for the hotel industry, hospitality. So it must be a versatile asset class for the REIT to actually sustain for a long term lah, ya. Okay, gearing and borrowing limits, ya. Okay, the debt to asset ratio is normally kept at 50%, and the reason why it is kept at 50% is to maintain financial stability and to avoid over leveraging. Okay, and then exceptions of course, higher limits for long-term secured financing approved by the Securities Commission. So in that sense, it can actually go above the 50% cap. The distribution requirement for a REIT, this is one of the reasons why REITs are so attractive, is because 90% of the income must be distributed to qualify for tax incentives. Okay, so it ensures steady income flow to investors lah, basically, yeah. So out of a 10 million earning, for example, distribution is about 9 million to unit holders. That's the tax incentive bracket for REITs, yeah? Okay. How do you select a good REIT? I think I've mentioned this just now. It's very important for you to first see who is the REIT manager, who is the sponsor, and who is the trustee. And then you go to the type of the property. Is this property, can it sustain in the long run? What is the subsector and the quality of the asset? And then the location, is it in prime location? And geographical diversification, not to say location, tapi properties located in the Klang Valley ni of course carry a higher return. So location is quite key, but as I said, it must be diverse, like it cannot be just concentrated on Klang Valley, yeah? So location is key. The growth potential, whether there is acquisition growth in the REIT, who are the sponsor, as Puan Shida asked just now, what is the characteristic of a sponsor? So it's something like Pavilion, KPJ and PHB. They are the classic examples of sponsor. And then financial structure, the capital management gearing, who's the management team. So the management team's profile, yeah, the experience, the professional integrity, it is very important for an investor before they actually invest, because they will look for people who are in the property market, people who have been in the market for 20 years. They know which industry is the better industry for investments to be captured. So the management team is very important, and the directors in the management company. So management of a REIT ni is very key. Who is the manager? So when starting up a REIT, the team members is very crucial. It decides whether or not you will go. It's a positive or a negative for the REIT. Yeah. And then governance, of course, there will be corporate governance requirements for parties to actually have internal corporate compliance governance in place. Okay. Performance matrix of a REIT. Yeah, the key indicators, of course, is the net asset value, the value of assets minus liabilities. the distribution yield. I think this is, of course, the only thing actually that a unit holder is actually interested in. How much is the yield that they're going to get from their investment? And then the occupancy rate, the percentage of rental space in the property. Growth drivers for REITs, there must be economic stability to boost investors' confidence. So the asset sector must be a stable asset sector. There must, of course, the tax benefits. REITs are exempted from corporate tax if certain conditions are met. For example, the 90% distribution condition, and urbanization, where there is an increase in demand for commercial and retail properties. Okay, the investment strategies for REITs, growth focus, invest in undervalued REITs with growth potential. So it need not automatically be a boom. As long as there is good growth potential, that's the type of REIT that you would want to invest in as an investor. But as a sponsor, then we need to take into account all these when structuring the objective and the strategy of the REIT. Okay, and it must be income focused. Select REITs with high and consistent dividend yields. Okay, and then the management team. I cannot emphasize this enough. There is a need to consider the experience and the track record of the management team. So for a company, for an entity like PKNS, because you've been in an industry player, kan? So I think for an investor, that they can actually take comfort in the management of PKNS and the experience that is actually on the track record of PKNS. Yeah, and then financial performance. Analyze the REIT's financial statement, including revenue, expenses, and debt level. Of course, as a REIT unit holder, you can rely on the trustee to do all this checking of the financial expenses, debt levels, but you have a role to play yourself. You have to ask the right questions for you to know whether the trustee is actually doing the job or not, and whether the manager is actually doing justice to you. So it is our role as an investor to actually analyze and attend meetings. I think something that people fail to do is attend unit holders meetings sometimes. So you give a free hand to the trustee and the manager to do whatever they want pun, it is not a good idea lah. So you have to take an active role, attend meetings, read your circulars, read the announcements, know what you're investing in, and if you feel that the investment that the company that the manager is actually proposing to you is not to the benefit of the unit holders, you have a right to actually vote against that transaction. Okay, so it's very important, even from the perspective of a manager and a trustee, you have to be able to justify why you think that this investment is a good investment, because you must always know that nowadays unit holders are more vocal than what they used to be. They know their rights. They know when they can actually say no and make it difficult for a transaction to actually go through. Especially what we've seen is related party transactions. The scrutiny in related party transactions are very high. And they will ask the questions to make sure that these transactions are on an arm's length basis and not given preferential treatment just because it is a related party. Okay? Okay. How do you invest in REITs and where do you buy these REITs? So for listed REITs, as we mentioned, it is through your stockbrokers. It is through the Bursa CDS accounts. So it is just a matter of purchasing, just like purchasing shares. Yeah, it's as simple as that. Okay, and then steps to invest in REITs. Yeah, you open a trading account with a licensed broker. Research the REITs listed on Bursa Malaysia, the portfolio, the manager again and the trustee, and you evaluate the financials, distribution and market performance of the REIT before you actually invest. Because you invest at your own risk, so we are responsible for our own investments, so we need to do the necessary due diligence. Just like when a REIT manager decides to actually acquire an asset, they have to do the due diligence. For us as investors, we have to do the due diligence on the entire portfolio, the track record of parties involved, and whether it suits our personal requirements. Yeah, okay. The benefits of investing in REIT is, of course, there's a stable income stream because it is a highly regulated industry. The REIT aims to provide steady income which are derived from existing rental paid by tenants who occupy the REIT's properties. So that is why it is their obligation to make sure that there is a good rental income that will actually come from these properties that they are investing in, because there is a commitment for unit holders to be actually given a certain percentage of returns on a yearly basis. Yeah. And then liquidity, of course, units of listed REITs are readily converted to cash and they are traded on stock exchange. Yeah. So if you're not happy with it, you can just sell and get back your cash. But of course, pricing is of course not guaranteed. Yeah, it depends on your the supply and demand of the units. Exposure to different real estate sectors diversifies your portfolio beyond traditional stock and bond. It is just another asset class. We invest in unit trust, amanah saham. So this is another asset class that can actually give us returns. It's a diversified portfolio of investment lah, basically. Yeah. And REIT properties are managed by professionals. I think that's important, who will add value for a higher yield, benefiting investors in the long run. So sometimes your investment may not bring you good returns in the short run, but you need to give it time for the asset to actually increase in value and performance. So but you're of course free to actually convert your investment into cash. Okay. Of course, REITs are also affordable. It costs a fraction of cost of direct investment in real estate, of course. Exposure to large-scale real estate is prorated through the REIT. And then there is a trust deed which regulates the proper procedures and strong corporate governance. And investors are only taxed once. Yeah, there's the tax efficiency. Okay, this management company is permitted to deduct distribution paid to its shareholders from corporate tax income. Tax ni is a wide topic on its own, so it will involve tax advisors to actually advise on. But what's important is from a legal punya tax lah, yeah, what we can talk about is the stamp duty and real property gains tax. Yeah. Currently, there is an exemption from stamp duty granted on the instrument of transfer of real property to a REIT, which is approved by the Securities Commission. It is under Exemption Order PUA 21. It's been effective since the 13th of September 2003. So, for a party, if assuming you don't have a sponsor kind of an arrangement, yeah. So, if any third party is interested to actually sell the asset to a REIT, then the REIT is exempted from stamp duty. So which is a huge amount of savings. Whereas when you buy an asset not through a REIT, then the purchaser will actually have to pay the stamp duty. So this is a very benefit that is actually hinged on when parties decide to actually establish a REIT because of the stamp duty exemption. And for a seller, the seller is actually also exempted from real property gains tax. So this is to incentivize parties to actually sell their assets to a REIT instead of to a third party. So they are not, they're exempted from RPGT, yeah? Risk of REIT is, of course, there's a market risk. REITs are subject to market demand and supply. Prices fluctuate with economic and interest rate changes. And of course, it's sensitive to changes in interest rate. Higher rates can reduce the appeal of REIT dividends, yeah? And then property-specific risk. Performance depends on the property quality. Changes in property value can impact the REIT performance. Okay, valuation, that's why there is a need for valuation to be done on a yearly basis or at least 6 months before an asset is actually injected into the REIT, yeah? Because it is very price sensitive, so valuation is key. Regulatory risk, changes in tax law or regulations could impact profitability. So for now, we have these tax exemptions on stamp duty transfer of property and also RPGT, but we don't know. At the next budget, we don't know. These tax regimes could change, yeah? So it is a risk that we have to bear in mind. And of course, the tenant risk, the risk of tenants' default or vacancies can affect the income. So if there is a back-to-back sale and lease-back kind of arrangement, it is much better because you have a long-term lease arrangement and the REIT is not affected by the collection of rental because there is a master lease-back arrangement. So that is normally a preferred structure for a REIT, which is purchase and lease-back, yeah? And then there's also loss of control over investments. Investors will not have direct control over the management company's investment decision, but as I said, you have a right to vote at the unit trust REIT holders meetings. And the returns are, of course, not guaranteed. Just like any investment, returns are never guaranteed, yeah? Okay, requirements for listing of a REIT. The minimum asset size for now is 100 million in assets to ensure viability. Okay, the public spread for listed, just like a normal IPO, at least 25% of units must be held by the public. Okay, managers' expertise must demonstrate a track record of managing properties effectively. So the managers can also hold units, but there is a certain percentage, a maximum that the manager can actually hold, yeah? Okay, for PKNS, just specific for PKNS, if PKNS is interested to actually venture into REITs, I think most of the key criteria have already been discussed, but one aspect which I think we need to pay attention to is the fact that PKNS has also got sukuk issuance, right? So sukuk is another form of Islamic instrument which for the issuer, the issuance is actually done in order to reduce existing borrowings. And then, but with that, the sukuk holders have got a lot of say on what PKNS can and cannot do with your existing assets. Because in the sukuk documentation, a lot of things require approval of the trustee before assets can be disposed of or additional financing can be obtained. Yeah. So because sukuk for PKNS is Sharia compliant, so there is a need to actually whatever income that is actually received from the sukuk must adhere to Sharia principles. So, but because we have Islamic REITs, so that is not an issue, but there must be a need to actually adhere to the debt to asset ratio. I'm just going to go through it very quickly. We don't have much time. As debt to asset ratio must not exceed the limits permitted under the sukuk. And then the asset utilization, it must align with the use of proceeds stipulated in the sukuk. Yeah? For example, sukuk proceeds are intended for development purposes. REIT assets may need to reflect this use. Okay? There must be structural alignment. The REIT as underlying asset, the sukuk could be structured with REIT's income generating properties as underlying assets. and it must be compatible with REIT's investment and divestment strategy. Yeah, and then revenue flow and governance, profit distribution. REITs typically distribute a significant portion of profits to unit holders, and this must be balanced with the sukuk holders' entitlement. Okay, you cannot give preferential treatment to your REIT holders when you have your sukuk holders' interest to balance at the same time. Yeah. Financial covenants, the sukuk agreements may include covenants related to financial ratios or minimum cash flow requirements, which the REIT must monitor and maintain. You cannot, must at all times ensure that there is no breach of covenants. And key considerations is the legal and regulatory framework for compliance with Securities Commission guidelines for REITs, Bank Negara Malaysia regulations for sukuk. So there is a need to balance because sukuk is also governed by BNM guidelines. Yeah, and then the trust deed for the REIT must not conflict with the sukuk terms. Okay, so I think just to sum up, yeah. REITs offer a compelling investment opportunity for investors seeking diversification, regular income and exposure to the real estate market. So this is PKNS from the perspective of PKNS as an investor, yeah, because PKNS can also invest in REITs, not necessarily that PKNS needs to be the issuer for the REIT. So when investing in REITs, it is crucial to conduct thorough research and consider the risks involved. And by carefully selecting the REITs and monitoring their performance, investors can potentially benefit from the advantages of these asset class. Yeah, we've just got some newspaper articles in. It's a bit unclear, but there are lots of articles in the newspaper on REITs. So if you have time and you need further depth understanding, I think you can read these articles, and of course you can reach out to us via email or through the PKNS legal team, and we'll be happy to actually answer some of your clarifications and questions. Okay, that's it from me.
Thank you, Puan Nasim, for the presentations. Maybe you want for the Q&A questions, if any questions. Ada siapa yang nak mengajukan soalan kepada Puan Nasim?
I hope it wasn't too boring. It's a very regulated industry lah actually. Actually, the tenancy need not be long term. The REIT guidelines doesn't stipulate that it has to be a long term tenancy, but tenancies are generally anything between 1 to 3 years. But ideally, from a REIT's perspective, if you have a long term lease, then there is more security of rental income coming in. So the only difference between a tenancy and a lease, of course, is for a tenant, you're not allowed to register your tenancy on the title. Whereas if you are a lease, if you hold a lease of more than 3 years, then you can register your lease on the title. So, but there are some, for example, retail in a building. Sometimes it cannot be on a tenancy basis, lease basis. So it can be on a tenancy, but normally it will be on a renewal basis, automatic renewal, so that there is at least ideally 10 years is what is ideal for a tenancy returns lah from the REIT's perspective. Minimum yield is not actually specified, but I think about 4 to 7% yield, if I'm not wrong. I'm not too sure about that, but it's about around there. More than 6, eh? More than 6, eh? Competitive, ya. Okay. So normally yang I tahu is about 4 to 7 to that range lah kan? It's got to be more than 6%. Oh, okay. About 6, ya? Okay.
Assalamualaikum Puan.
Waalaikumsalam.
Saya Puan, Sheila.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Just untuk perkongsian kepada semua. Okay, basically kita adakan digi klinik berkenaan dengan tajuk REIT sebenarnya berkaitan dengan PKNS juga. Sebab selama ni kita memang ada property yang kita dah REITkan, in which memang di bawah sediaan PREC, dan pada masa ni pun PKNS dah decide untuk kita REITkan beberapa property. Dan I think memang sekarang ni exercise by PREC lah.
Okay.
In which the overall yang kita nampak sekarang ni, kita tak berapa nak clear apakah itu REIT dan kenapa, why we need REIT the property lah. So ada few property in which yang even kita punya HQ, kita punya hotel di Palma yang kita akan REITkan. Cumanya dia ada beberapa kriteria sebenarnya, in which ada yang certain property yang kita dah list untuk REIT tu sebenarnya terpaksa diturunkan sebab dia tak mencapai yang sepatutnya lah.
Okay.
Okay, mungkin sebab I think this mungkin lebih kepada sesi untuk perkongsian juga. Mungkin kita boleh dapatkan input daripada wakil PREC just share apa dia punya challenges untuk kita proceed dengan REIT sebenarnya. Mungkin daripada Cik Razia ataupun daripada Syai ke? Dia share on PKNS exercise on REIT.
Siap, okay.
Okay, bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Maybe Razi nak naik ke?
Tak apa, I just stand here. Okay, untuk perhatian semua, for the last 1.5 years, kita try to work it out our PKNS REITs lah. MB pun dah bagi nama dia SDE REITs, Selangor Darul Ehsan REITs. But unfortunately, a month ago during the board PREC, we decide to postpone a little bit because satu, the size is not big enough. We are targeting SD REITs to be a 1 billion worth of assets lah. And then di peringkat sekarang ni, the assets is only worth about 700 million saja. So, and then aset-aset pun dilihat sebagai aset-aset yang not so trophy looking, dia tak dapat menarik perhatian investor-investor in the market. Because kita akan masukkan komplek PKNS, komplek Bangi, and then kita ada menara worldwide, laman PKNS, worldwide at 7, dia ada worldwide HQ. So ada 7 lah sebenarnya, and then di Palma Shah Alam. So aset-aset ni sebenarnya financially kita dah skim it nampak cantik, tapi unfortunately pihak board, group CEO merasakan kita perlu tingkatkan lagi di jumlah aset tu bernilai sampai 1 bilion, and then mungkin aset-aset yang nak masukkan lebih cantik lah. So this is the thing yang saya rasa Puan Sheila nak dapatkan angle kenapa PKNS perlukan REIT sebenarnya. So REITs ni sebenarnya adalah satu instrumen yang sangat penting untuk developer macam Sunway, IGB, Si Hoi Chan, Wang Utama. Mereka menggunakan REITs ni sebagai satu instrumen untuk raise funding, untuk menjana lebih banyak capital untuk dia menjalankan development yang akan datang. So kalau lihat pada financial PKNS sekarang ni, our money is stuck at our assets. Kita ada banyak aset tapi aset kita tak perform. So bila aset tak perform ni, kita tak dapat a very high recurring income. And then bila tak dapat high recurring income, kita nak monetize, nak jual pada orang luar atau kita nak masuk dalam REITs pun tak lepas. So the problem right now is that we have to really work out a model yang macam mana kita nak naikkan aset-aset yang ada di grup PKNS. For example, worldwide, di PREC, and then di PKNS, di PKNS Andaman, Datum Jelatik, Mall, and a few others. So kita kena, this is where kita akan bergerak sekarang ni, come up with a model. Investment committee pun telah diformkan untuk melihat macam mana kita nak naikkan income kepada setiap aset ni. And then even tanah-tanah yang ada dekat GRIP tu, Green Industrial Park bawah PKNS pun, akan di-pledge untuk REITs juga. Apa yang akan dibangunkan dekat tanah-tanah ni untuk kita be able to dapatkan income yang tinggi dari segi rental income, and after that kita monetize to the REITs. For example, kita ada tanah 5 ekar industrial, and then kita buat development industrial logistic warehouse, katalah 50 juta. Tanah is 20 million. So total cost is about what? 70 million. Tapi bila kita dapat tenant whatsoever yang akan memberi kita income yang recurring ni, value of that 70 million tu akan jadi 100 million. So kita akan jualkan 100 million tu kepada SDE REITs, and PKNS akan dapat keuntungan about 30 million kat situ. And 30 million tu juga akan digunakan untuk pembangunan tanah industrial yang sebelahnya pula. So this is how we gonna expeditekan development ni, rather than duit tersangkut dekat aset atau pada product development tapi tak boleh nak raise fund untuk mempercepatkan lagi projek-projek pembangunan yang sedang rancak, yang banyak yang ada dalam pipeline PKNS. Itu daripada perspektif saya, Puan Sheila. Ya. Okay, over back to you.
Any further questions? Okay. By that, saya rasa terima kasih Puan Nasim di atas pembentangan. Saya harap perkongsian pada pagi ini dapat dimanfaatkan oleh semua anggota PKNS dan juga anak-anak syarikat, whereby indirectly it can generate income untuk PKNS in the future jugalah. Saya mempersilakan Puan Sheila untuk memberikan sedikit cenderamata kepada Puan Nasim. Okey, minta tolong untuk scan untuk berikan borang penilaian latihan oleh HR. Okey, oleh yang demikian saya sudahi majlis pagi pada pagi ini dengan ucapan terima kasih dan Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.